Remember, I'm a simple person, so you're going to see how this is going. I'm not using external things for anything. I'll use a window, okay? So, number one, make sure that when you're looking through these beautiful seed catalogs, you are looking for something with a short season that has 110 days or less growing time, okay? Two different types of crops. Cool season hardy crops, cool season tender crops. Tender means they need to be covered, either at the beginning of the season or at the end of the season to extend it a little bit. And there's an example there of what those crops would include. The more hardy crops would be like your beets and your broccoli. Okay, those do really well up here without any type of season extensions whatsoever. Green beans do really well up here too, by the way. We'll get to those. So that's how you're going to first start looking for seeds, okay? I actually recommend where we are up there, 100 days or less, okay? So heirloom versus non-heirloom. There's a lot to learn about seeds, but I'm trying to keep it simple for you. Heirloom seed means that you should be able to keep that seed and grow the same plant the following year, okay? As long as there's no cross-pollination going on. Like if you have a greenhouse full of 20 different types of tomato plants, if you're saving that seed, you probably won't get the exact same tomato next year, but you'll get a tomato, okay? So keep that in mind if you're trying to keep heirloom seeds. You don't have to grow just heirloom. You can do non-heirloom, and you can still save the seeds if you want to. You might have a surprise of what kind of a crop you get, and it is kind of fun to say, oh, wow, I wonder what that came from. But as long as it's edible, I don't really care. That's kind of how I am. I save seeds of whatever I can save. And then hybrid seeds. Hybrid seeds are not necessarily bad. A hybrid seed is just seeds that they have crossed to do a certain thing in a certain type of environment. For instance, like dogs, they'll cross, two types of dogs, and then you come up with a shepherdor, right? A shepherd and a Labrador, because of whatever reason. So this is what they do with seeds. So if you're looking for a particular type of broccoli that is good for cold weather and certain climates or whatever, then you might want to go with a hybrid seed that's bred especially for your area. Okay? Some people hear hybrid and they're, oh, that's awful, don't grow a hybrid. That's not true. Do your research on that, okay? So then when you're looking at seeds and the packages, how do you know how to decipher all that information that's on there? Well, number one, it'll tell you the description of what the plant is. It'll sometimes have a picture of it. It'll tell you your days of germination, and that just means when it pops up out of the dirt, okay? It'll tell you your days of maturity, okay? Now that means that is the time that it's actually, from the time that it comes up out of the ground until the time that you can eat it. Okay, so keep that in mind. It'll also tell you if it's good for certain diseases or weather tolerance, how deep to plant the seeds, and how to space them and all of that. So it's important to read the seed packets before you just start buying seeds. I made that mistake when I first started, just buying whatever. Oh, that looks good. I'm going to da-da-da-da-da. And now I'm looking at them going, I will never be able to grow that up where I live. Why did I buy that? That was many years ago. And by the way, you can keep your seeds for years. I have germinated 11-year-old seed before. Takes time, but. And that is kind of small, but you can take a photo of that if you want to. This is just kind of a rule of thumb that I go by. And I got these dates from this is pretty cool if you want to look at this later. This is Clyde's Garden Planner. And these are available at Baker Creek. And it just tells you from whenever your last frost date is, you move this slide and it tells you when to plant things. So it's kind of cool. You might want to take a look at that. So it just kind of gives you an idea of when to start seeds. I don't buy plants. I start all my seeds from scratch, okay, in the dirt, or in the potting mix, I should say. So sowing indoors on the left-hand column there, I've already got sweet potato slips back there. I start those early. Herbs and flowers should be started right now if you haven't done that already. Celery takes a very long time to germinate, so you better get that going right now. And eggplant, if you're going to do that. And peppers will be next month and tomatoes next month for me. So anyway, that gives you an idea. Those are seeds. And by the way, I start early because I don't use heating mats and I don't use grow lights, okay? Because I can't do all that kind of stuff the way that we live. So if you're going to supplement with heat underneath and lights over, you can probably add 30 days to each of the dates that I have on there because you're adding extra things to make them pop up and germinate faster. So keep that in mind. The dates that I have put on there is nothing extra added. It's literally just a little dish of dirt in the windowsill. okay? All right, so direct seeding means putting them directly into the ground, and that is when your soil can be worked. It's going to be different for everybody because there's so many different microclimates. But as soon as the snow is gone and you can get your rake and your shovel in there, you can already start putting peas in there, onions, potatoes, and chards, okay? And then after the frost are your more tender crops. Keep good records. Get a little calendar book from the Dollar Tree and write down, I planted this seed, or I sowed this seed in January, it popped up January 15, and I was eating it in June, or whatever. So next year you'll remember, oh, I need to start that one earlier because it didn't germinate for 3 weeks, or whatever, and I didn't eat it for 6 months. So that really has helped me a lot to do that. All right, when I've done previous classes, I used to bring all my dirt and potting mixes and stuff, and I decided not to do that this year, so I took a video of me doing it, so you're going to watch that. Of how, and I'm going to talk you through it here. Oh boy, can you see that sideways? So this is my favorite thing to pot, and these are little tofu tubs because they're just really shallow. So you wet your mix, your potting mix, they're just enough so it just kind of sticks just a little bit together there, okay? Not soaking wet, but just enough. And I usually use warm water, hot water. It helps to germinate the seeds. So go ahead and put it in your little shallow dish and make sure you have holes in it. That's very important, okay, so that your water can run through. And you can see I'm just kind of patting it down in there, making it nice and smooth so that your seeds will stay on the surface better, okay? Get a dish to put it in. And then I'm just using my fingers and poking some little holes in there. Remember to check the back of your packet to see how deep the seeds need to go. If they're surface sown, just sprinkle them over the top, like lettuce, okay? These are tomato seeds that I'd saved from last year. And so I'm just putting some seeds in there, and then you can just tap it with your hands and just kind of cover it up just a little bit. I think those are maybe buried 1/4 of an inch or something like that. As you can see, this isn't fancy. I'm just doing this on my dining room table. So, and then I'm covering it up, make sure the seeds are covered there. I pat it down because it kind of sets the seeds down in there good. And then when you water it, don't just blast it with the sink, okay? Because your seeds are going to go everywhere. And you're going to have one lump of seeds over in the corner of your dish. So, you know, do it very gently. And make sure you label. I'm really good at forgetting to put a label on the seeds. Oh, I thought I knew what this was till it comes up and you go, oh, whoops, that's not what that was. Yeah. So that's how you sow seeds. Easy. Anybody can do that, okay? Not fancy stuff. Like I said, there's nothing fancy there. I get a lot of questions on once you sow your seeds, I have this problem and that problem, and so I thought I would add this in here, some common problems that people ask me about. They don't germinate, which means they're not coming up. I've tried it, nothing's coming up out of the soil. Well, it could be maybe it was too cold. Maybe you need to warm up the soil, okay? There's ways that you can do that. If you have any kind of a wood stove, if you have a rack or something over your wood stove, just put your seeds up there. That'll get them to pop up really quick. On top of your refrigerator is another really good place to get them to germinate. There's just enough heat there. If you have heating vents, you can put them up there. Just keep an eye because they will dry out a lot faster, and you don't want fresh seeds like that to dry out because then they'll never germinate. Maybe they're not being watered well, so keep an eye on that. Maybe you planted your seeds too deep, okay? And maybe it's really, really old seed. Like I said, I germinated 11-year-old eggplant seed, but it took probably 3 or 4 weeks. And I had to put some heat, put it up on top of the stove. So those are some reasons why it might not germinate. And here's a possible solution for you to help with those problems, because if you just use these little lettuce tubs like that, flip them upside down and make a little greenhouse, it'll help keep the moisture in there, keep the heat in there and all of that. But air it out once in a while, because otherwise you can have some mold growing in there real quick. And they need the air circulation too. And so once they pop up, people ask me sometimes, oh, now they're not growing, they're just kind of sitting there. Well, maybe you have really bad potting mix. You know, I've had that problem. So if you do, then add something like a fish emulsion or some type of a fertilizer to it. Again, heat it up, or maybe you're just watering it too much, okay? Maybe you have pests. Aphids sometimes will get on it, or you'll have gnats in your soil, and that's because possibly it's bad soil. You need to disinfect it. Make sure that your pots, every time you use them at the end of the year, clean them really, really well, because they can carry all sorts of microbes and things that can pass over into the next year. And then I'll show you the legginess. Legginess just means they get really, really tall and spindly, and they start falling over after a while. And that's because there's not enough light. Maybe they need to be rotated, and they need to be transplanted, and I'll show you that. And damping off is when it just dies. All of a sudden, it just dies, and you don't know why. And more than likely, that's because there was something in your soil. But it could be, too, that you weren't watering it enough or too much water, so there's a balance in there. Just keep an eye. So, when you're touching it to see if it needs water or not, the soil should just kind of stick to your finger a little bit when you touch it. Okay, then you know, oh, that's good. Obviously, if the soil is starting to shrink away from the side of the container, then it's dry. You can usually tell. So this is legginess, okay? And this is what I get a lot of times because I'm not using supplemental heat or light. And so my plants are trying to get to the light, okay? So that's what they will look like. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm going to show you what you can do about that problem. One thing you can do is you can add support to it. Those are just little sticks I got from the Dollar Tree. And the best thing to do, though, is to transplant. And so I have a really good close-up picture of here. That's a pepper plant because I want you to see the leaves on the inside of the plant. Those little teeny tiny little leaves, those are called the second leaves or the true leaves. Once you see your plant have those leaves on it, that means that you can transplant the plant, okay? Don't do it before that because it won't live. So you have to wait, and I'll show you here on this video here. So that's a tomato. See the second set of true leaves on there? Once you see those on your little seedlings, then it's safe to transplant, okay? I'm not gentle. Literally, just take your fork in there, dig it out, okay? Have your soil all ready to go, and you just stick it in there and fill it in with the soil, okay? So that's how you're going to transplant. If they're starting to get really tall and leggy, you can do that. Now, I'm going to show you, this is a taller, leggier one, okay? It's not real good looking, but I'm going to show you what to do with it. And this is the same for, you could probably do this with eggplant. And I'll show you another example here too. I literally just fold the plant. I make it into a U, okay? And I push it down into the hole and then cover it up with soil. And that entire stem of that plant will grow root all around it, okay? So those that I was just showing you right here, the leggy ones, that's what I will do. I will take that entire plant like this, and I will literally just fold it in half, and I will push it down inside the pot. So that the only thing that's sticking up is just, the top set of leaves, just above the dirt. Now, why, and I'll fast forward through that, why transplant? I get this question all the time. People say, why don't you just take a big gallon-sized pot, fill it up with dirt, and put a seed in it and let it grow? Does anybody know the answer to that? It's not good for there's too much room in here for it to grow. All it would do is get really tall and fall over and die. I used to work in a greenhouse, and this is what we did. This is the method that we did. The little teeny tiny little seedlings would come in, and we would transplant them, 4 or 5 times. You start small, okay? You start small. And then you go to the next container, which you saw was the little cell packs. Or you could do this. Because when you're in a smaller container, the roots are forced, right? The roots hit the side of the container, and so it forces the nutrients up into the, the stem. And it forces it to get bigger and stronger, okay? So then what you do is you go to the next size. Like you could see the picture. I went to some cups there. You go to the next size. You transplant it again. How do you know when to transplant it? If they start getting tall and they look like they're about to fall over, then it's time to transplant it. And transplant it as deep as you can get it, okay? And then you go to the next size, which would be this. Now, I am doing this because I'm starting in January and I'm starting in February, so that by the time I'm actually putting my plants out into the hoop house, which is unheated, usually around April, my plants are about that tall, okay? And sometimes they've already got flowers on them. If you don't do that and you just stick a seed out in the ground, you probably won't get tomatoes that season. Or if you get tomatoes, they'll probably be green. Does anybody have that problem? I mean, that's how I started out until I learned In the cold climate with such a short growing time, you have to make the most of those days, meaning your plants that you put out have to be almost full grown before you even get them out into the ground, okay? And so by transplanting them 3-4 times, you're gonna have a really big, healthy, strong plant that will do much better for you, okay? So I do this with tomatoes, peppers, and eggplant mostly, because those are the plants that need the most attention, and they like it warm and things like that, and I like to have them big before I get them outside, okay? So now that you've got them in these big plants, I always talk about this because people say, well, I don't have a garden, I don't have a yard. Okay, so let's all think, what can we do if we don't have a yard? Do you have a patio, okay? What can you do? I try to help everybody think outside the box because not everybody has property or gardens. But everybody needs to start thinking along the lines of, I need to be growing food for my family. I need to be taking care of my kids. When you go to the store and a head of iceberg lettuce is $5, there's a problem there. Sorry, because iceberg lettuce is mostly water. That's beside the point. Anyway, so think, what can I do to be growing food? You don't have to have a humongous garden to grow greens. I'll go over some more of this later. All right, so you've got your plants in your pots, and hopefully you have already done this in the fall. If you have not, then you will have a very busy spring, but it can be done. Make sure that you put up a fence first, number one, okay? I've talked to so many people, oh, we put our plants out and the deer and the rabbits and everybody came and ate it all. And I said, did you have a fence? No. Okay. If you plant your garden first, the animals are going to know that you have yummy food there and they're going to come and eat it, right? So once you put your fence up, what are they going to do? They're going to jump the fence, they're going to knock the fence over, they're going to climb under the fence because they know there's food there. We don't have any problems, but I mean, we do have outdoor dogs, but put the fence up first. Okay. Different types of pests, and these are just ideas that I like to throw out there. Somebody gave me the idea of doing a double fence so that the deer won't jump it, sorry. And that means you have a tall one and then a shorter one about 2 feet out from it because they're afraid of getting stuck between the two fences. Hair keeps them away. Hanging soap bars. Dogs, of course, are really good deer deterrents. I've heard shiny objects. And gophers and ground squirrels. The best thing, we used to have a problem with that in our orchard, but the best thing is to just get a cat. Honestly, they don't like the smell of the cats, and they just kind of disappear. It's kind of nice. I think in 6-7 years, I think I've dealt with one gopher. You can trap them and do other things too, but that has worked the best. Okay, still talking about getting your garden ready so that you can get your plants out there. You can do soil testing. I'm not going into that. That would be a whole nother day of class. Look online on how to do that. Chickens are great because they till your soil for you. If you can let them up there before you start planting things, that helps, and they get rid of pests. And of course, they add fertilizer. Different types of tilling and double digging, amendments that you can add. Worm castings would be another way that you can add good things to your soil. And then warming your soil too, and I'll go over that later in the next one. Okay, so now your garden is ready. And again, think, in the fall, try to be doing all of these things if you haven't yet. But, springtime, as soon as snow is melted, you can do it. So you've got your large plants and they're ready to go out. They're still inside, okay? Still inside. I know, it's a lot of plants. If you start thinking about you've got 30, 40 tomato plants in pots this size, what do you start doing with them, right? Your family is getting really irritated with you by now. So you have to harden them off, okay? Hardening them off just means you're getting them ready to go outside. If you take a plant that you've had in your nice, warm, whatever, bedroom window for 3 months and you throw it outside in the cold, what's it going to do? It's going to die. It's going to be in shock, right? Okay? So you have to acclimate it to that. So there's several ways you can do it. But if you don't have any type of a hoop house or greenhouse, then just put them in a big tub of some kind and take them out, put them on your front porch for a few hours, bring them in. Put them out for a few hours the next day, bring them in. Don't put them directly in the sunshine the very first week or so, because the sun will kill them too. They're not used to that. debris. You got to be careful of that. Pets that could be walking by could break them, knock them over. So then, leave them out for several more hours and then put them a little more in the sunshine. Okay, you see what I'm saying? A little bit more each day for, I don't know, a week or two, depending on the weather. And then eventually leave them outside. Watch the temperatures, though. If you have a hoop house, the picture there on the right, what I do is I harden my plants off up there and I pray. Because I have so many, as you can see, and these are in my bedroom window. So I just put them all up there, usually around March or April, and then you can see at the end of the row there's covers. So I put some bamboo sticks in between and I lay a cover over them and I leave them covered up there for at least a week. And if it's going to get extremely cold up there, then I'll put 2 or 3 covers over them at night and then uncover them during the day because they're getting used to all that sunshine, okay? And then eventually just take the cover off completely. So you're doing that for about 2 weeks or 3 weeks, just kind of depending on what the temperatures are. So now your plants are hardened off and they're ready to go into the ground. So if you're going to do, like I said, the tomato plants, you want to bury them as deep as you can because that makes a stronger plant. So I always dig, as deep a hole as I can get, at least a foot deep. Put some type of amendments down in there, worm castings or manure of some kind or whatever you have going there, kitchen scraps, something like that down in the hole before you put the plants. And also I wanted to mention, plant a radish seed with each of your tomato plants because that keeps the pests away because the pests will eat the radish underneath. And then just let it go to seed. And it'll keep coming back every year, okay? And also you can put a little clove of garlic in between each of your tomato plants too because that'll help with pests. And just let it keep growing. Don't harvest it. I mean, you can cut the tops off and use it for cooking, but just leave the garlic in there and you'll just have garlic forever. If you're going to transplant into the ground outside, again, depending on what type of plant it is, if it's a hardy one, just go ahead and put it out there. But I want to warn you, you may have some transplant shock. So that means that your plant may, it looks like it's dead there. So ways to avoid your plants doing that is to do it on a rainy day or on a cool in the evening. And somebody actually told me, I'm not a scientist, but there was some type of scientific terminology that plants go through after, I think it's 4 o'clock in the evening. Something inside the plant shuts down. And so you can transplant them in the evening and have better luck with, and not have as much transplant shock, okay? And make sure you water them in really, really well after you do that. And also make sure that you're putting in your supports at the same time. Because if you wait to pound in your tomato, stakes after your plant is this tall, you're going to break a bunch of roots down in there. So have your strings going. These are just different types of supports. The string worked really well. I actually used tent stakes that I found and tied one end of the tent stake and one end to the beam in the hoop house and then wrapped the plants around, and that worked really well. The bird netting works well to grow like peas, sweet peas and stuff on. And then the cattle panels, they work too. They get kind of heavy though, and sometimes it's kind of hard to get your hand in there and, harvest the tomatoes and things like that. But these are just some ideas for you to support your plants. And another thing that I like to do is something called intensive planting, where maybe your greenhouse is getting full or your garden is full or whatever, but you really want to get some lettuce and some greens in there. So all you have is this little tiny space. Well, just plant them all, just the whole packet, okay, in that little tiny space. And then when they come in, it'll probably be, maybe May or something, and then they'll be ready to go out to your garden from your hoop house. So literally, you just take your shovel and you just dig up a whole big bunch of them and you just start pulling them apart. And it doesn't hurt them. Just pull them all apart and stick them in the garden wherever you want them. Maybe lettuce under your cabbages, and under your broccoli because they like shade. So that's just one way to get a bunch of seeds in a little space, and then you move them around wherever you want to after that. And then you can put more spacing in between them. Okay, so here's how I transplant. I'm always moving things around just for whatever reason. I said, this doesn't need to be here anymore. It needs to be over here. So here's how you do it. And this is actually celery. I'm not gentle, like I said. I just take my shovel and I dig around it, around the roots. And maybe I was just trying to put more space between the celery plants, I think, actually. Yeah, this is a pink celery, Baker's Creek cells. And you're going to end up chopping up some of the roots. That's okay. And then I just dig it out. You don't have to shake it off, but I did a little bit. And then you just dig another hole and you put it where you want it to go. There are some plants I would not recommend this with, especially squashes, winter squash and summer squash, because their roots are very, very tender and they don't like to be messed with. So I would never transplant one of those like this. You will kill it for sure. But that's just to show you how easy that is. And with celery, you can actually overwinter celery. So if you're starting your celery seeds right now, or in the next, yeah, you should start them now. By the time you put them out in probably May or so, they're probably going to be at least 6 to 8 inches tall. Leave them out in the garden all summer long. Harvest it, it grows back. Harvest it, it grows back. It's crazy. And then, before the first frost hits, dig it up, just like that, like I showed you there, and put it in your greenhouse. Put a cover over it, like I'll show you in part 2, and you'll have celery. Next year, take that celery out of your hoop house, put it back out in your garden. You'll still have celery. It's crazy. I think I've done that for 3 years with the same plant. After a while, they start to get kind of not so good, so then just start over. But it's pretty neat that you can keep it like that. I bet you didn't know that. Trial and error. This is just an idea I like to throw out there. Weeds. That's just cardboard that I put down. Because people ask me, how do you water? How do you deal with weeds? I hand water everything. And so I don't have as many weeds as a person that might have a sprinkler system going that's watering everything, okay? And then if you do raised beds, you don't have as many weeds to deal with either, so that just kind of helps. I usually get questions on pollination. Eggplant are self-pollinating, so you don't have to worry about trying to pollinate by hand the eggplant, so that's kind of nice to know. If you want to put it in your hoop house, you can just cover it and keep it warm because it likes it really, really warm. Tomatoes, I just usually walk through the hoop house and just kind of shake the vines a little bit like this, and they'll pollinate. Or if you have a fan going in there, that works really well too to pollinate. With cucumbers, I just learned this a couple of years ago. There are different types of cucumbers. The ones that you would probably want to get would be the parthenocarpic ones. I've got that word on there. It's kind of a weird word, but if you want me to show you, I can show you in one of these catalogs. They don't need pollination at all. And they're really good for greenhouses or hoop houses that are not open, maybe. Melon and summer and winter squash, it seems like I'm always having to hand pollinate. I don't know if anybody else is having the same problem with lack of bees and things like that. Yeah. So just keep an eye on it. A lot of people will say, you know, I have all these flowers but no fruit. Well, you're having all the male flowers. I mean, there's nothing, at least from what I've researched, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there's anything you can do to force it to make different types of flowers. Whatever flowers come out is the flower that it has. So how do you tell the difference? There's the male and the female flowers. Well, that's a picture there of the female flower because it has the fruit attached to it. Do you see the little melon there that's forming? Or I think it's a zucchini. Okay, so that's the female flower. So when that opens up, then you take a male flower and you just pollinate it. Just stick the flower down inside the female flower there. And that's all you have to do. And it'll pollinate it. And then that fruit will get bigger and grow. And you can watch that on YouTube. They have demonstrations on there. So how do we extend our very, very short growing season that we have? Okay, so these are some tips and some tricks that I have learned. One thing I did that worked really well was I just dug up my pepper plants from the greenhouse and I just brought them inside. So these are the same plants. I brought them in October. By December, they had completely ripened. So I had orange and red peppers. Now, after that, around January, they started to get aphids, so I just threw them out. But that's just an idea that you could do. And I really like this idea. I found this online. Anybody could do this. Literally just go buy yourself a bag of potting mix. Cut the top open and peel it open, okay? And stick some seeds in the top and put a clear tub over it. You just made yourself a greenhouse. You could go out on your back porch and you could probably start down here maybe. You could probably start doing this in February. I'd say next month. Because in February, my covers are coming off of my greenhouse inside. We'll get to that. But it should be warm enough inside that tub like that to germinate seeds for lettuces, spinach, kale, things like that. In fact, if you're going to start seeds right now, I would suggest that you're starting lettuce, spinach, kale in a window, in a sunny window. And if you don't have a greenhouse, do something like this. And when your plants have those true leaves, like I showed you, transplant them to that bag of soil and cover it up. You'll have your own little greenhouse garden. You'll be amazed how much food would come out of one bag of potting mix. You can look on, I saw a lady do that. It was incredible. This is another little idea that I don't remember where I heard it, but I put, I think that is cabbage. I knew that there were still going to be some frosty nights coming, and I did not want those little tiny seedlings to die, because this, I direct seeded this one into the garden. So I just put these over top, and it completely protected it from all the frost. And they did really well in there, and then I just took them off once I knew that they were going to make it past that. So again, I don't have any money in that, okay? Worked really well. Now these are kind of cool. You can look these up. You can find them online. They've gotten kind of expensive. I found mine at a thrift store, but these are neat. That's what they're called, a wall of water. I don't know if anybody's familiar with them, but you just literally fill it up with water about 2/3 of the way full, and you put it around wherever the spot is that your plant is going to go, and you put it there about 30 days early before so that it can be warming up the soil that's inside that wall of water. And then you just peel it back and put your plant in there, and then it shuts itself, and it's a mini greenhouse. It's really warm inside there. So I use this for my squash, and it works really, really well. Here's another idea. If you can't do a hoop house, you can build little grow boxes, and if you can't build, then you can just get some straw bales and go to like the Restore or something and get some old windows to put over top of it, and there you go. You've got a greenhouse under there. It will get extremely hot, I will warn you. So make sure you vent it once in a while, but don't forget that it's open, because you could lose your plants if you forget that at night. And this is probably the best and the easiest way to extend your season is with row covers. And I bring this piece up here if people want to see it and feel it and touch it and everything. But this is a row cover, okay? It's just a piece of fabric, kind of fragile, but they last for several years. And this will extend your season 30 days at the beginning and 30 days at the end. So I'll show you how to do this, okay? So it's probably maybe around April. You've still got maybe, at least I do, a little bit of snow, or your soil's not quite thawed out yet. So what I do is get some free black plastic from Home Depot, the lumber wrap, okay? Or you can go buy black plastic if you want to. Like I said, I'm simple. So get something black, a trash bag, whatever. Put it over your garden space that you're trying to thaw out, and leave that black plastic on there for the whole month of April if you want to, or whatever. And it's thawing out what's underneath. It's warming it up, okay? And there's no more ice under there. Then your bed should be, see, now I'm trying to get you to extend your season, so think here. Now you've got the soil thawed out earlier, okay? So now you're going to put out the more hardy crops, like the lettuce and the spinach and the peas and maybe some onions and things like that, or cabbage, broccoli, like it cooler. So you've got a bed now that's all thawed out. So go ahead and put your plants in there, okay? Then you need to cover them. So there's two ways. This is called PEX tubing, okay? P-E-X. And you can just literally stick this in the ground like this over your plants, okay, every, I don't know, 2-3 feet or whatever. And if you don't want to use that, you can use this. This is called a wicket. We'll go over this, but this is number 9 wire from the hardware store. And I just bent it like this and put that in the ground. But either way, you're just trying to make a little support. And then what you get is this floating row cover. And they're also known or also called frost blankets. So if you look online on Amazon or eBay or anything like that, they're called frost blankets. So then what you do after you put your cold hardy crops in the ground is you cover them with this. Clip them with little clothespins or whatever to keep the thing from blowing away. Now, this will protect from the frost. Now, if it gets minus 20 like we just had, they probably won't make it. But this is just for like light frost. We're talking like May, okay? So you've just extended now your season 30 days by doing this. So keep them covered until you think frost is over sometime in June, and then take this off, okay? So now you've got May covered, June, July, and August. Okay, so your first frost is usually what, around the first week of September, I'm guessing? Okay, so do the same thing, end of the season. Put your supports back in the ground, get your frost blanket back out, cover everything back up again before the frost comes. That'll protect it for another 30 days. So you can still harvest all of those greens and the cabbage and the kale. Obviously, you don't probably want to do that with your tomatoes and peppers. I'm talking about the hardy ones that just need covers, okay? All right, so now you're up to how many day growing period? Just by doing that. And it works, I'm telling you, it does. But you have to be vigilant. You can't just go off on a vacation for 30 days and come back, oh, my garden's all dead. Well, I mean, it is a commitment, I'm telling you. It is a commitment. It does take time, and it does take thought, it does take effort, because a lot of people will tell me, that's too much work, I don't want to do all of that. Okay, then good luck, you know? I mean, we have to do something, right? Do something. Okay, so here we go. This is just another idea. Build yourself a little tiny hoop house. This was built by, I think he was 11. This was my Mother's Day present. And so this was literally just the gray conduit pipes stuck in the ground with plastic thrown over it, and then a wooden pallet cut in half on the end. So there you go. There's an idea for you. So let's go over, oh, that's really small. I apologize. So these are different herbs. This was in part 1 of the seminar, of the introduction, the welcome, but if you didn't get it, these are some herbs that I recommend that you grow and why. Okay, I'm not going to go through every single one of these, but this just gives you, you know, some people grow basil just because it tastes good. But did you know that it's an antibiotic, and that it's an anti-inflammatory, and that it's anti-cancer, and that it's antiviral, and all of these things? I didn't know that until I started really researching it. And this is going to lead into part 3 when we talk about herbs and how to make your own kit, because you need to start growing them yourselves. And this is the time to start your herbs if you haven't yet. You can get them at the Dollar Tree, by the way, if you're short on funds. Go there and get a bunch of basil for 25 cents. Okay? So I recommend that people grow plants, perennials that come back, because you're putting your money, you know, into something that you can really count on each year to eat. Asparagus you can grow from seed. I've done it. It takes time. So just go buy the crowns if you can. Go buy it. North 40 always has them every year, asparagus crowns. But you got to get them early or they'll be gone quick. So they come back every year. At least 20 years I've heard in the same bed. They are the very first plant to pop up in the spring. Did anybody know that? Have you read about asparagus? I have read that it is one of the most nutritious and nutrient-dense plants that you can eat. And the reason why that it comes up first is because we have been all winter without anything. And so this is the first one that comes up. So anyway, you can do your research on that. Cabbage grows really, really well. Cabbage, you can keep it covered, like I said, beginning of the season 30 days, end of the season 30 days. There's different types. You can do early cabbage so that you can have them right away. Or you can do a later cabbage, a storage cabbage. Depends on what you're looking for. For me, I like to do the storage cabbage because then I have it all winter. You know, you can get 15 to 30 heads of cabbage. And if you pull the whole entire plant out of the ground, you can hang it by its roots in the garage or in a cold place, and you will have cabbage all winter. You'll have cabbage probably till March or April. Fresh cabbage. Now, I'm telling, it's not going to look like that, okay? You'll have to peel off some leaves. But this is what I do every single year. Carrots. So carrots, have you noticed I've heard anyway, there's a shortage on carrots. Shortage on everything, I guess. But this is what I do. So some people like to plant them out in their garden. It wasn't working for me. I don't know why. So I just started doing it in the greenhouse, and they work great in there. Carrots and tomatoes are companion plants, so plant them together, okay? So I do a row, usually around April, I'll do a row of carrots. They'll be popping up before I put my tomatoes in. And then I'll do another row of carrots, and then another row of tomatoes, and another row of carrots, and I put them close. I mean, you can see the picture there. And that's garlic down the center, by the way, that just keeps growing. And they like each other. They do really, really well. I've been doing that for many years. And then I just leave them there. And then whenever I need carrots, I just go up there and I just dig them out. And some people say I leave them in the garden and I get them out in the wintertime when I need them. But I would like to know how you're digging through 8 feet of snow to find your carrots. I'm not going to do that. I have tried harvesting them and putting them, in cold storage, but they just don't last. They rot. I've tried every imaginable thing, and this is just what works for me. Garlic is very medicinal also. It was mentioned in the other slide. Make sure you're growing garlic. You need to put it in the ground in October. And then you need to harvest it towards the end of July, early August. When the leaves at the very bottom start dying, then you pull them out, put them out in the sun, half shade, and let them dry out for a couple of weeks, and then you'll have garlic all year long. Garlic has gotten very expensive too, if you hadn't noticed that. So green beans, this is how I do the green beans. That's called a flat, and so I just fill a flat up with the soil, a potting mix, probably around April. And then I just put the green bean seeds in each one of those, and then just leave them in the greenhouse and water them, and then I put them out in June, in the garden in June. People have said it can't be done, you can't transplant green beans. I've been doing it for years, so it works for me. I do the bush beans because they don't get very tall and they don't need support. They only get, maybe a foot high or something like that. But you can do the pole beans if you want to. If you have fences, you can grow them up on those. That's fine. The other reason I like to do it this way is because when you put them in your, after you've dug your trench to put them in, you can put a plant every 6 inches, and you have a plant there. How frustrating is it to put green bean seeds in and half of them don't germinate? And then you've got a row with no green beans. And then it's too late to do it again, right? So I like this method. It works really well. Onions. If you're going to grow onions in a short season climate, you have to get long day onions. Isn't that funny? It's true. You can read about it if you want to up here. Get the long day onions because the summers up here are long. The days are very long, okay? And I'm going to show you how I do this, but I have figured out how to overwinter onions. So what I do is around the, probably the end, maybe middle of August, I will go ahead and sow all of my onion seeds out in the garden wherever I've got a little patch. Because it's intensive planting, they're really, really close together because I know I'm going to be moving them into the greenhouse. So I get them going, and once they're a certain size, then I move them to my greenhouse, and I put a little cover over them, you'll see, and they stay there all winter. And then after danger of frost, then I put them out in the garden, and then I spread them out. And I started them from seed. The other thing you could do is you could start them right now, in your little trays, and then you can put them out later. But I have found that mine don't get very big doing that. How many of you have done the onion sets? The little round, yeah. How big do they get? No, they do terrible. Do you know why? It's because they're already in their second year. They are selling you onion seed that's already been growing for 2 years. Yeah. So grow them from seed. Or plants. You can buy the live plants at North 40, and they'll do pretty well for you. One trick is after you put them outside, and the tops start getting pretty good size, then what you do is ring them in. That's what's called ring them in, and you can look it up online. There's demonstrations. You can take a little knife or a little fork and just pull the soil away from every onion, okay, so that the roots are still in the ground, but you're moving that soil away from it so that the bulb can start getting bigger, okay? And then you can get special fertilizer, and I'm going to forget it. It's either blood meal or bone meal. I get them mixed up. Does anybody know? Blood meal. One of them is for the green growth, and one of them is for the root growth. So anyway, one of them, bone meal, you're going to put on just to get the green tops going. And then the next one you're going to put on just to get the bulbs going. You don't have to do that, but it's worth it. I think it's worth it because I finally got some big onions. I said, oh, this is the secret. This is the trick. So anyway, that's onions. So you can see they're in the greenhouse there on the left-hand side. They're little teeny tiny things. This is me. I had just transplanted them in there. And then on the right-hand side, I've spread them out and put them in a bigger bed. So I'll show you how I transplant these. Same thing, I'm not really careful, okay, literally. Just take your scoop in there and dig them up. And this is going from outside, I think it's around August probably, or September, I don't know, before the frost comes. And pull them out. They're pretty hardy, I'm telling you. I mean, these are little green onions. You can eat them like this if you want to. But I'm trying to get them big, right? I'm overwintering these is what I'm doing. And so I take them there from there, and I go and I put them in the greenhouse. I thought I had shortened this one, sorry. You get to see me digging up all sorts of onions here. Not all of them come up, you know that. But once you transplant them, you can still keep them close in the greenhouse. Keep them close together, okay? Because you don't want them getting big and forming huge bulbs in the fall. Now, I already have a place prepared for them. You don't want, if you're transplanting, you don't want your roots just hanging out for a long time. You don't want to just set them out in the sun or whatever. That's not good on them. So have your hole dug, have your trench dug or whatever, and ready to go for the plant that you're transplanting. And I literally just lay the onions in there on the side, and then I just take the dirt and I just scoop it over top of the dirt. And you know, you don't have to be very particular about it right at this point in time until springtime comes, and then you're going and you're going to put them every 3 or 4 inches apart or whatever. So that's how you do the onions. And it's been working for me really, really well. And you can cut the tops off if you want to, but these are not the ones that I prefer. I have winter green onions that I use for that. These are ones that I'm hoping to get big bulbs out of in the spring. Okay, so that's the onions. Potatoes. You can get organic potatoes from anywhere, and you can start sprouting them at home. It's called chitting, which is sprouting, and you need to have a bright, cool room to do that in. And you need to try to have at least 2 eyes per potato before you put them in the ground. The eyes are, you know, the little sprouts that start coming up like that. People have done burlap bags and pots in different ways. You just have to figure out what works for you. Some things don't work for me. I just put them in the ground. It's the easiest way. But there's the no-till method. I know people will take old straw and things like that and put them over top. So do research on potatoes. And potatoes are getting harder to get, good ones anyway, harder to find too, and expensive. So these are the sweet potato slips. I've been growing sweet potatoes now. I think this will be my 5th year. And people said that can't be done either. Well, so there's a few sweet potato plants back there, but they're actually called slips. But did you know that you can eat the vines? So if you wanted to just grow a sweet potato plant, just put it in a pot and hang it in your window and then just eat the vines. Totally edible, kind of like spinach. So the ones that are back there, you can do that with it, or you can just take them and throw them into a pot into your greenhouse like the bottom there. I'm doing them in pots now. But so this is how you do it. Just take a little shallow dish and put some soil in there and put a sweet potato in there or a yam from the store. I've done organic and non. They both have sprouted for me. So anyway, don't cover it completely, as you can see the picture there. Keep it watered, and they'll start growing. It's crazy. So then you just clip them off, just break the little sprouts off there. When they get to be approximately 6 to 8 inches long, just break them off and then stick them in a glass of water, and then they grow roots. And that is your slip. And so that's what you actually plant into the ground. They take around 5 months, so you need to have them in a warm place, have them covered somewhere. If you're not going to do it in a greenhouse, if you're going to do it outside, at least put a plastic or something over it to keep them warm. And then once they start to flower, it's around a week or two after that you can start harvesting them. And you can look online on how to cure them, because it's kind of different, but they have to be warm for a while, like by a wood stove for a week or something, to develop their sweetness, and then you can store them in cold storage. So this is the squash. I finally figured out how to grow the winter squash really well, okay? So get your black plastic out, warm up the area where your squash is going to go, because they like it warm, okay? Have your holes already dug where they're going to go. Put some good stuff down in there. Usually what I do in the fall is I bury kitchen compost down in each of those holes, along with some manure or whatever, to get it ready. And so it's composting all winter, so it's ready for spring, okay? So you've got your black plastic. I would leave it there. That keeps it warm, keeps the vines warm as they go, okay? So when I plant my squash seeds, I will plant them in a bigger pot, because like I mentioned, they do not like to be messed with. Do not be transplanting these 4 times. So you're only going to transplant it once from this pot to the ground, and you have to be very careful with it. But it can be done, because this is how you do it. If you try to direct seed sow a squash, you probably will get little tiny little things about that big by August or September. So start around May, and when your plant starts getting to be a pretty good size and you think, I could probably go out now, what you do is you put your hand over top of it, cradle it like this, okay, and just very, very gently tap the bottom of it, okay, to get the pot or the plant out of the pot. And then you're just very gently going to put it in that hole that you've already provided, okay? It's ready to go. And then cover it up. I've been doing this for many years. As long as you're careful, it works. And then cover it up. You see the cover that I have there? It's the same covers. These are very multi-purpose covers, okay? And that will keep it warm, and it'll grow with that black plastic and the heat and the cover and everything. It'll really take off, and it'll go crazy. Leave it covered until you start seeing little flowers. Once you see the flowers, then you know they have to be pollinated, okay? Then take the covers off. Now, you could cover them still at night if you wanted to. If you had the time and the energy to do that, that'd be great. But if you don't, just take the covers off, and then once the season, I don't say the season is over, but it technically is for us, probably mid-August, you're not going to get any more fruit off of that plant. It's too late in the season. So go around and clip off every single little tiny squash that you wish was going to amount to something. It's not, and it's very hard to do. Trust me, it's heartbreaking. But take off all those little ones, okay? Any buds and blooms and extra shoots that are starting to come out, just clip them off, take them off, okay? Because you want all the energy to go into the fruits that are left on that vine. And then go ahead and cover it again, because no more pollination is going to happen. So this is around mid-August. So leave it covered again until probably the end of September. When you start seeing the vines start drying up, then you can start harvesting your squash and leave them out in a sunny place for a week or two and let the skins harden until your fingernail can't poke through it. And then you'll have squash all year or all winter. So, I know this is a lot. This is a lot. So let me just go back a little bit. So you've got a hoop house that has all these greens in it. You've got celery in it. You've got carrots in there. You've got onions in there. Garlic in there, right? You could even do herbs, parsley and things like that. Will usually go through the winter. You've got your potatoes stored up. You've got your squash stored up. You've got your cabbage stored up. Got your carrots in the ground. So that makes a pretty good pot of soup, don't you think? So this is why I try to teach people grow things that are going to last, that will get you through the winter, that you can store. Okay. It's fun to grow okra. Okay, I've grown it, but to me it's not worthwhile. I will put my time and my effort into other things that will last, like the green beans, and you can them, right? And then you've got them. Blueberries take 6 or 7 years to get fruit on them. So do them now. Okay, already talked about celery. If you're going to do corn, I've done corn. Get the shortest day corn that you can find. Okay, it is possible. And do it in the flats like I showed you with the green beans. Same thing. Start them early, transplant them out when they're about 6 to 8 inches tall, and you will have corn. Best tasting corn you've ever had. Greens you can keep sowing pretty much all year. The sunchokes, also known as the Jerusalem artichokes, if you're not familiar, I would recommend those. They are beautiful. They have big, beautiful sunflowers on them. And then you can eat the root. And they spread, and nobody knows there's food in the ground because it just looks like a flower bed. And you can leave them in the ground, which is nice. Okay, obviously raspberries and strawberries. Okay, so real quick. Saving seeds, I already had a book recommended, Seed to Seed, that's really good on saving seeds. There's two different ways. The wet seeded means that you are taking the seed out of the plant, cleaning it off, okay, letting it dry. This is one method with the tomato seed. You have to let it rot and then peel the rotten stuff off because it takes the gel sac off of the seed. Dry seeded is just like lettuce and things. You let them go to seed and then they spread their seeds around, or you can just take the seed head and shake it into a little baggie and keep those seeds. All sorts of different ways of saving seeds, but make sure that you keep them into good containers that are going to be, waterproof and airproof. Keep them cool. Make sure you label, and then you'll have seeds. So I already had this on there, but this is the website for if you want to go back and look at the link on this one. And we are going to take, where's Tiana? We're going to just take a really quick, I think she's got some prizes, hold on. And then we're going to take a quick, like a 5-minute break while I get ready for part 2, which is the winter gardening. And then after that, we will go into part 3, which is going to be making your own herbal kit, which I'm excited about because that's new this year. I added that. And write down your questions because we will have a question and answer at the end. So, you have a mic? Okay.
All right. While I'm mixing these, I wanted to mention our church also has a community garden here with about 18 raised beds. So if you are looking for some more gardening space, please come see me. I'd be happy to get you some more information about it. We have it watered on a timer, so you don't have to come every day and water it.
Can I come down here and do my garden and it's watering time, self-watering?
I know, right?
Sorry.
Yeah, yep. Not all the community gardens I've been to have that, but
That's
we
awesome.
are excited. We also have a raspberry and strawberry patch started. So, okay, so we have a few door prizes here today. I would like to start out, we're going to do a calendar planner. She talks a lot about documenting. It's good to keep track of what you're doing when you're doing it. So this is Minute Press. This is a sponsor of ours that helped send out the mailers if you received a mailer in the mail. The first prize for that, or the number, is 76072. 072. Is that number here? There it is. Congratulations. You can come. Do you mind coming and grabbing it? Thank you. There you go. All right. Our next prize is from the wonderful hardware store, Peter's Hardware Store. It is on Sprague. I don't know if you know where that's at. They have donated us a lovely garden shovel. It's actually really handy. It has the depth measured on it, as well as a $25 gift card to spend. They have a good little garden section, and they're getting ready to add more.
Nice.
And they also have seeds. 76084.
Over there.
Okay. Congratulations. Happy gardening. You're welcome. All right, we are going to do 2 more, and then we'll do a few at the end. All right, Kitchen Engine is a little ways away from us, but is worth the trip. They have donated some wonderful items here. This is a strawberry huller. That looks very useful. 76067 gets a strawberry huller. 067. There she is. All right. And we'll do one more. The next one is, let me read here and make sure I'm telling you the right thing. Kale and greens stripper. Oh, so you put it through here, and it's going to help you just strip that right
Oh,
off.
nice.
That looks handy. 76098. 098, there it is. All right, congratulations. We also have, Dawn has been so gracious and brought us some extra, you're welcome, Baker Creek seeds. As you get up to take your break, check the bottom of your chair underneath. It might be a little hard to get to, but there is, I don't know, did we say about 20 packets of seeds? So
20 or 25.
check under your seat and enjoy if you get it. I hope.
So we'll take a quick 5-minute break and then come back. Those are so cool.
right. If you guys want to find your seat, Dawn is ready to get us rolling on the next section, and you're not going to want to miss out on this. This is very exciting. So you can find a seat, please.
Okay, we are ready to start. I don't want to keep you here all night long. I know there's a lot to think about, talk about, and digest. And I will hang around afterward for other questions too. So, how in the world did I get started on growing in the wintertime? And why in the world would a person want to grow in something like that? So, going back to the first thing, why I do what I do. So, I've always liked to garden. And at the end of the season, I would kind of be a little bit sad, hanging up my rake, right? Oh, it's over. And then I started thinking, how can I do this all year? And I thought, I would like to have a greenhouse, but greenhouses are really, really expensive. And you have to have heat in a greenhouse. And you have to have this, and you have to have that, right? So when you live the way that we live, way up in the middle of nowhere, and you can't run heaters and you can't run all this kind of stuff, how can you do this? And I wanted to start being able to provide food year-round for my family. So it started me out on a journey of just Googling, winter gardening, how to, stuff like that. And so I came across Elliot Coleman. Maybe some of you are familiar and heard of him. So I ordered his book on winter gardening and started flipping through it, and I was looking at the pictures, and I thought, man, this guy is doing exactly what I want to do. And so he's on the same 44th parallel line as we are, same type of climate and temperatures, and I thought, if he's doing it, then I can do it. So the first year, my family and friends thought, wow, that's crazy. Is this really going to work? And I thought, I don't know if this is going to work or not. But like he says, it's unheated, it's uninsulated, it's unbelievable, okay? So these pictures that you're seeing throughout this part of the seminar are the first year. This was 7 years ago, I think. And I took pictures constantly because I didn't know if it was going to work or not. So it was just unbelievable. So here's how we did it, okay? There's 3 things that you have to do if you want to winter garden. Number 1, grow the right things. Don't be trying to grow watermelons, okay? Make sure you're growing cold, hardy vegetables. I will have a chart on here. But if you're looking for specific things that are for winter, a lot of times in the bottom of the catalog, they'll have a little snowflake by the seed. And then oh, that's for winter. Okay, I'll try that one, all right? You have to do succession planting. When you are growing in an unheated greenhouse during the cold winter months when there's hardly any light, the time from sowing the seed to the time that you can actually eat that plant triples. So you have to I've done the math for you, I'll show you a chart. But you have to think, you have to go back 3 times, whatever it is. So if you've got your turnips here, your turnips say 50 days, okay? That means 50 days from emergence. That means the seed has already popped up out of the ground, not from the time you sow it, okay? 50 days times 3. So 150 days until you can eat this in the wintertime, all right? Hence the reason you start winter gardening in July. I know, but it works, all right? So the next thing you have to know is you have to have protection. You have to have good greenhouse plastic. Don't go buy the cheap stuff. I will tell you that, okay, from experience. Get the 6 mil actual greenhouse plastic. Spend a little bit more and get it from a good reputable company. Get the anti-drip coating, anti-drip. Or you will be walking into a rainforest every single day. And every time your shoulder bumps the side of the plastic, you will get soaked. Trust me. So what you want to get is this, okay? It's called This is the Secret to the Inside, which I will show you pictures of. This is AG, or Agrabond-19, AG19 fabric, okay? Frost blanket, AG19. You can find this online. Not expensive. I think it's like 15, 20 bucks or something. And like I said, it'll last you many years. The AG19 lets in 85% of the light during the wintertime, and we'll go over that. So that's what you need to know if you want to do this. So these are dates that I have used as to when I did the math. I went back, multiplied everything times 3 and went back and kept charts and calendars and all these things. So basically, I've been doing this long enough now that I don't look at this anymore. I just start everything in July, in the middle of July, approximately. And then about every week or two after that, I do another sowing, and then I do another sowing, and then I do another sowing, and then I stop. I would down here, you could probably go through October, the middle of October. I've learned to stop up at the end of September, where we are. So this is not an all-inclusive list. These are plants that I have actually grown that I know that grow and that work well. A lot of those come from Johnny's because, they supply seed to Elliott Coleman. Okay? So like I mentioned, succession planting. You don't want to plant everything at one time, or you're just going to have a hoop house full of, 1,000 spinach plants that are all the exact same size. So here's how we did it. Okay? I was in a hurry. I wanted to get this in. I knew we had a limited amount of time, but, we're busy people. So what I did was I just went ahead and started digging up soil from the forest and brought it in and made the beds. And then my husband says, "Oh, that's going to be really hard to build around that." Well, I'm sorry, but now you have to build it. So anyway, this is how we did it. We did a 12 by 20. When we started out, it's now 24 by 20. But anyway, this is how we started here. We just put a frame around the base, okay? Not fancy, as you can see. And this is the secret right here to the snow load. We actually bought the 20-foot rebar and we put it inside 2 pieces of 10-foot gray conduit. So we put the 2 conduit together, okay, 10 and 10 is 20, which made a 20-foot span, okay? And then we inserted the rebar, 20-foot rebar, into the conduit, and then we bent it down. It bends easily because it's so long. It takes 2 people. It's really kind of a pain. And then we attached to the inside of the frame. One side, bent it down, attached it to the inside, okay? That's what we did. And I can't remember. I think he said each span was like 2.5 feet, depending on how much snow you get. If you don't get as much snow, you may not even have to do that close together. Then we ran a bar across the top, just conduit. We did not put a rebar in the top, okay? So with 2 20-foot pieces coming together like that, it made a 6-foot ceiling, which is not very tall. It works for me. Ways you can get around that is to build your structure up a little bit more. I don't know how else you could do that. You can dig down. I dug my paths down a little bit, which gave me a few more inches, so that kind of helped. This is how we did our front door. Not fancy. What we did was we went to Les Schwab and got some rubber tube and cut it apart and made long strips and tied the frame to the door post there. Because whatever is going to come in contact with your plastic is going to rub on it. And so we didn't want holes in the plastic. So that's how we attached it. And that's what the finished frame looked like. Now, the bars going across the center there, we took them out. We didn't need them. We thought we would to help with support and everything, but we didn't. They just were in the way. So we took them out. But that's the only picture I have of that. So when you're getting your plastic out, you cover the 2 smaller ends first. So the way you do that is you go up the top and you clip them. Well, I'll show you that in a minute. We clipped them at the top, and then we ran little furring strips at the bottom and just nailed those in. And I tell you what, it has held up really, really well. And so this is how we attached it to the plastic. These are just water pipe right here. We just cut little pieces off and they're kind of hard when you first get them, but they do open up, okay, like that. And then you just clip it over top of the rubber, and that holds your plastic to the hoops. And then on the very end, I got this idea from his book here. It's called a half moon vent, and we just put door hinges on it, and that way the thing would open all the way if I wanted to, or close it, however, like that. And so originally what I was doing every day was going up there and opening it all the way and then closing it at night, and that got to be a pain. So we've done some upgrades I'll show you here. And then we put a long, 20-foot piece of PVC on there to roll it up and down. The framing brackets down there at the bottom just keep that roll from falling on the ground, because otherwise your plastic's going to go all over the place. So that's what it looks like when it was finished. And you can go online, you can find thousands of different plans on how to build a hoop house. Hoop house, greenhouse, high tunnel. There's many different terms. So these are improvements that we have done over the years. The netting, the black netting that you'll see on the front, the top left picture, that's just bird netting, and I put that on there to keep the cat out because it was always getting in there, digging up my carrots. So that's why that's there. The automatic vent is the bottom right-hand picture. You can get those online. I think it's Avent or A-V-E-N-T, I think. And that has saved so much time and effort because the little black piece there on the bottom is filled with wax, and so when it gets really hot in there, it melts, and so it opens your window, and then in the evening it cools back down and it closes it for you automatically. It is so nice, I'm telling you. You could put one on your door if you wanted to, and if you have like a plastic, corrugated plastic greenhouse, you could put them on the windows that are up on the top. They'll work up there too. And I would highly recommend that you put a beam through the center of your greenhouse if you can, if you have a lot of snow. I've had friends who have tried this method with the cattle panels, and it just has collapsed on them. And I said, well, did you keep the snow off? Well, yeah, so it didn't work real well. So if you can, put a beam, and if you can't put a beam, we went for the first 2 or 3 years without a beam. And it worked, but I was constantly taking snow off because I was so afraid. And it came down and it bent, but it never broke. And then it would go back up when I would take the snow off. So the rebar really does work well. Probably the most snow we had on it was 2 feet at one time, overnight. And it held up. I wouldn't recommend it because it's a little bit nerve-wracking to go out there and see your, yeah. But if you can't do a beam, the other thing you do is just get some 4x4 posts or 6x6s or something and just prop them up somehow just to kind of help in there, or 2x4 if you have that, if you know there's a lot of snow coming. The other thing we did was we added a reinforced back wall because we had a mudslide come through and take out the back part, so we did that. And that helps with all the snow that's behind it too, because otherwise you got a lot of pressure of the snow that's pushing on that plastic. We took out the plastic PVC roll-up pipe and we put a metal one on and put a handle there. And I took those 2 pictures because it's really hard to explain, but there's a hole drilled in the handle, right? So the handle goes in and out like this, okay? So you roll it up and you push it in and you can hold that plastic where you want it. If you want to take it all the way over the greenhouse, you can. If you only want to go up, a foot, then you just push the handle in. Does everybody understand how it works? Okay. And then we had one time some kind of like a freak windstorm, and the downburst came down, and we didn't lose our plastic, but we lost a bunch of clips, so parts of it were kind of, off. And so we added string to it, and we used those little eye screws on it and went back and forth like shoelaces, over, back, and forth, to help with the plastic. And then the fan. You have to have ventilation or you're going to have all sorts of problems in there. You don't want to get spider mites and aphids in there. It's almost impossible to get rid of them. So that's just an old fan from a truck, I think, so we hooked it up to a solar panel. And so it just runs when the sun's out, which is perfect. That's what we need it to do. Okay, so let's go on. Now that your greenhouse is built, how are we going to do this? So you want to make sure that your plastic is on before it starts freezing outside. So probably around October, something like that. So once you put your greenhouse plastic over, your plants inside now have been tricked into thinking that they are now another 1.5 zones south. So if you're in a zone 5, now they think they're in a zone 6.5 just from that one piece of plastic. okay? Let's keep going here. And this is the best part about it. In November, you don't have to water anymore. I watered one time this year because I went in there and I said, why is everything in here so dry? This is really weird. Well, I had left my fan plugged in, and so it was really drying everything out. I should have unplugged it for the winter. So that's why. But anyway, normally you don't have to water unless you see that, oh, it's been really, really warm this year. I think, oh, we'll add some water. Go ahead. All right, so these are called wickets. I've already shown you one, but that's the official term, I guess. Number 9 wire comes in big rolls. Okay, measure your beds, how wide they are. You want this to be 12 inches above your soil, not above the plant, but above the soil. Okay, so if your soil line is right here, you want your wicket to be about 12 inches above that. So figure about how long you want your legs to be. And make sure that you put this in before it freezes. It's not fun to try to cram these into frozen ground. Well, anyway. And then put them about every 2 to 3 feet on your beds so there's no drooping of the covers, and you'll see. So this was the first year, and the entire greenhouse was filled with winter plants. Because we had just built it, well, you saw the beds. I had brought all the dirt and everything in there, and I had so much. I was so excited. I tried every single plant. I wanted to see what would grow, and wow, I had a lot of food to eat. But anyway, people always ask me, why do you just use the AG19? Why don't you use like a thicker fabric? So I did some research on it and reading, and I found out, according to the trials that this farm has done, the heavyweight fabric actually leads to more soil freezing. It only increased the degrees by 2, and it let in 50% less light. So there you go. Stick with that. Just go with the research. So now you put these on before it starts freezing inside the greenhouse around November. And now your plants that are underneath this cover think they're another 1.5 zones south. So now they think they're in a zone 8. So you've gone from a zone 5 to a zone 8. Let your mind think about that for a minute. Yeah. So your plants are actually, especially when it's really, really cold, like we had minus 20 or 22, they're going to freeze. This is just the whole miracle of it all. This is just amazing to me, okay? And this is why I have to tell people, because I had no idea this was possible. Did anybody know this was possible? No, your plants actually freeze at night, okay? And then they thaw out during the day. It's like, what? So don't go up there early in the morning hoping for a breakfast salad, because they're still going to be frozen. Your plants are going to be frozen. Your covers are going to be frozen. And trust me, do not try to peel the covers off of the plants. You will destroy your plants and you will tear your covers. Just wait. Sometimes I've been in such a hurry, I will blow on trying to thaw the cover out because I need some spinach, right? So anyway, if you just wait until everything thaws out, go up there once a week, do your harvest, get everything in the fridge, and then you don't have to go up there. So if it's going to get really cold like we just had, what you do is you add another cover. You can add another one of these, or you can add a sheet. I just keep piles of sheets up there, and I get ready, and I just go up there and throw sheets over everything, okay? And then when those cold temperatures are gone, take them off. My plants are still alive. We had minus 20, okay? And I was afraid. My kids said, Mom, everything up there's dead. I said, no. And I went and looked. I'm like, oh, they don't look so good. But I gave them a couple days, and I went up there and I go, they came back to life. And all I did then was trimmed off just a few of the dead leaves around the outer edges that had really gotten toasted. They're fine. I have a picture I'll show you. So, most importantly, make sure you are taking the snow off. Even though the sun is not shining very much in the wintertime around here, there's still light that's coming in. So the plants need the light, okay? They don't need the heat. You don't need to be running heaters. They need the light. So the snow is coming down or you're brushing it off or whatever. Don't let it start piling up and piling up because the sun is shining down like this, and so you're going to get a shadow, okay? And your plants are down here. They're not going to get any light. Keep the snow away. If you have a snow blower, that's even better. So this is from his book. Look at that, 28 degrees outside and 70 under the fabric. This is why they're thawing out during the day. This is why they're actually growing. I will show you that. It's a miracle. It really is. And so these are questions that I get. Down here you could, but up there I would say no sowing after October. It slows down. Because, it takes so long. You can sow seeds if you want to in October, and then when the warm temperatures come back, like around end of February, they will take off like crazy. They'll just kind of sit there and be dormant and just kind of wait. So you can do it, okay? But if you're wanting it to eat in the winter, don't. So people have asked me too, why not do 2 layers of plastic? Some people want to do that and then blow a fan or something and have air. And according to what I have read, it's not worth it. It's an extra expense. You're using extra electricity, and all it's doing is cutting out the light, and it's just, one is all you need. And then people have said, instead of doing these covers with the wickets and everything inside, why don't you just put little cold frames in there? Well, you could, but they don't ventilate. So you're going to have to go in there every day and open up the cold frame and close it at night. See, these ventilate. And if you don't ventilate it, everything in there is going to grow mold very quickly. And also, you can get these row covers and these wickets and things right up against the edge of your plastic. It's a very good use of space compared to, big boards taking up big spaces with the grow boxes. Oh. And if you can't do this, how can you improvise? Like I was saying, there's so many different ways. If you don't get a lot of snow, just do something like that. Anybody could nail together some 2x4s and stick a cattle panel over it. A kid could do that. Here's some more ideas. Make sure you're ventilating it once in a while. If you're doing it under a glass door like that, it'll get very, very hot, even in January. So I have been asked how, the question is this all you use your greenhouse for? It was the first year because I didn't know, okay? But now I figured out how to use this year-round, okay? So let me go through, starting in January. So what I do now is I have a designated section, which is the very front bed, which somebody asked me, south-facing. If you're just starting out and you're just getting ready to build something, your greenhouse, the longest side of it needs to be south-facing. Okay? With no big, huge, tall trees. You might have to cut down some trees, but the Lord will take care of you and He will bless your efforts. So what I do is I take the very first bed that's closest to the south-facing wall there, and that's just that's my winter garden. Okay? So the picture on the bottom right, I just took that 2-3 days ago. That was after the freeze, the minus 20 degrees. Look how it came back. I should have taken a before and after, but it was too cold up there, and I couldn't move the covers because they were half frozen. Yeah. The picture on the top right, I wanted to show you. Those are the carrots and the celery. In January. Okay? So the bed on the left is all the winter stuff. So this is what I do in January. Herbs and celery and lettuce and spinach and the sweet potato slips. So I kind of already went over this and when to sow seeds and all of that in January. So in January and February, you're just harvesting food from your greenhouse and starting some seeds inside in your window, in your little tubs. That's what you're doing in January and February. I tell you what, there is nothing better than being able to walk into your own personal private garden, whatever you want to call it, grocery store, produce aisle. It's a miracle. It really is. And it is worth the time and it is worth the effort, especially these days. Not to mention what's in the food that we're buying, right? So this is February. eggplant, peppers, tomatoes. I'm sorry, I will go back.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. And so in February, the days are starting to get longer, and it's going to start getting warmer in your greenhouse. So what you need to do now is you need to take the covers off. Now you can finally see everything that's in there, right? They're not covered up anymore. So the first picture there, that's the first year. The whole entire greenhouse was full of, look at all of that. I had so much food, I was giving it away to everybody. I didn't know what to do with it. But now I know I don't need that much, and so-and-so doesn't like this, and so-and-so doesn't like that, so now I just grow what we like and what we eat. And now I just have the one bed instead of doing the entire greenhouse. It was just too much. So in March, look at all the snow we still had up there. Food, though. We're eating food. We're eating fresh food. You just got to keep the walkway clear to get up there. You walk in there and it's warm. How many of you have ever, experienced that in the middle of January or February when there's so much snow outside, and you walk in there and it's just green. It's like a Garden of Eden. And you can sit in there, it's 70 degrees. You sit on your little cart and you're pulling some weeds or swinging in your swing. Not really. I'm not swinging in my swing. I am pulling weeds. Okay, so April and May, I've got things started inside, like the squash and things like that, that will be transplanted outside. April and May just run together. I can't say specific dates because, every single year is different. You just never know anymore. You just have to keep an eye on the weather and the temperatures and pray a lot. And so this is when I've got my transplants out, hardening out there in the greenhouse. I showed you that picture already, but I wanted to show you the picture up on the left there. See, that's my winter bed. And so the rest of the first year I had learned to do this, that was all empty there in the center because I didn't know what to do with it. But now you've seen the other pictures, it's full of carrots and celery and garlic. So I never have a space in there that's not being used. And by the way, the picture on the right in the very back, those are peas, winter peas that I started in the house and brought out. So I was eating snap peas early, really early. More transplanting and sowing in May, just so you kind of have an idea of what's going on in there. And then, you start putting stuff outside as soon as you can. If you've already got your beans done in your flats or whatever and they're ready to go out. Sorry, did you get it? I'll go back. I was trying to watch to see if I got everybody. This is online too, so I'm sorry I go so fast. It's so much information. And I try to squeeze it in, and I'm sorry if it's overwhelming for you. Okay, we did that one. So usually around June is when you're going to start cleaning up and getting the winter stuff out of there, unless you're going to let it go to seed, okay, which you can. I usually keep 1 or 2 plants from each variety and tie it up to one of the hoops or something so it's out of the way and just let it spread its seed, and then they just kind of come up. And then you can put the plants where you want to, or you can just keep the seeds for the next year, if they're the heirloom seeds. But, I've already got some zucchini growing in there in June and peppers, and I don't remember what those other things are down there. Sweet potatoes, I think. So now after the frost, you're taking out your green beans. You're taking out your corn. That's opening up more space in there to bring in your other things that you might have going on, okay? I'm constantly moving things around. More seed saving. Like I said, you can just let them go to seed on their own. I have a neighbor that does that, and he has stuff just growing every which way, and it's okay with him. I'm kind of like, I like things in a certain place, but you can do however works for you. Okay, so now we're in July, and it is coming. I promise, July is coming. So when I first started this, what I used to do was I took the first part of the bed and I just did spinach here, okay? And then I came down 4 or 5 feet or whatever, and then I just did kale. And then I came down over here and I just did whatever, the winter onions. The problem with that method that I have learned is that you have to then pick up the whole entire cover if you want a salad, because you have to get a little bit from here, a little bit from here, and a little bit from over here, okay? So then I got really, really smart. So then what I did was, it's the picture on the right. This is what I do now. I do a little bit of everything in about a 4 or 5 foot space. And then 2 weeks later, I go down here and I do the exact same thing again. A little bit of everything. So that way, that first part of the bed there is ready, and all I have to do is pick up that one cover right there, and everything's right there that I need for my salad or my soup or whatever, okay? And then by the time you're done harvesting that one, cover it back up, and then the next week you're going to go over here and you're going to harvest from the next section. Does that make sense? So August, we already talked about onions. Start putting things like, so what I do now in August is I just take some lettuce seeds and I just literally just start sprinkling them underneath the tomato and pepper plants that are in the greenhouse, and then just let them start growing. They're not going to grow really, really fast or really, really big because they're in the shade of the other plants that are in there. But then what I'm doing is I'm preparing those plants for winter, because the peppers and the tomatoes and the eggplant will be coming out. So when I pull them, sometimes I don't pull them out because the roots will mess up what I've already done, so I'll just cut them off there at the soil level. So I take those out, and then I've got all these other greens and different things growing in there that have already, established themselves. So I'm able to grow I do not do watermelon anymore. They don't get big enough for me. I just forgot that, but you could if you really want to work hard at it. But I do get eggplant and tomato and pepper. I'm usually eating little cherry tomatoes around June. So June, July, August, and September, and into October this year even, I had tomatoes and peppers. So this does work. So in September, I cut it off now for myself. I don't go past September. I don't do any more winter planting after that. But now is when you would bring in your celery or different things like that don't need to be out frozen. And then October. Final planting inside if you're in a warmer climate anyway. Moving things in. November. If you're bored, go up there and trim off some dead leaves or something. It's nice and warm in there usually, even if the sun's not shining. December. Isn't that amazing? This is just mind-boggling to me. This was the first year. The variety of beet tops and things, and turnips that taste like sweet apples, the Hakurii turnips. It's just incredible. So people always ask me, are they growing? Somebody said they're not really growing, they're just sitting there, just staying alive. Okay, so I went back and looked at my photos. So you can see it's the same 6-month period of time from an October to March, and you can see the difference. So that's going through the coldest, darkest months of the year. So you can see the growth. It's the same bed, taken at the same exact angle. Is it growing? Yeah, it is growing. It's amazing. Okay. So let me take a few minutes to answer questions about this gardening section, since I'm done a little bit early, and then I'm going to go into part 3 because I see some people having some questions. Is that okay? Yes. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
So I got a super quick question. If I build like the hoop house on my garden area, and I fix it to where I can lift the sides completely.
Do we want a mic? I'm sorry. Do we want to so that everybody can hear, and then I don't have to repeat every question? That would be great. And I'm sorry, we got done a little bit earlier than I thought. We kind of sprung this on her. Right here. Yes, she has a good question. I'll do my best.
So if I build my hoop house where the sides can be opened up completely open, can I plant in it and leave it there for the summer?
Yeah.
Or do I still have to transplant?
The winter plants, you mean?
Well,
What are you wanting to
anything.
leave in there?
So I start my garden in the house, then I put it out into the garden, but I want to put it out early. So I put the sides down, heat up the hoop house,
Yes.
put it in there.
Mm-hmm.
Then when it's warm enough, just open it up and leave it
You can. I don't know what your temperatures are like.
here.
I close mine at night because it still gets kind of cold. And if it gets below 40 degrees, your tomato plants will drop all their buds. So it takes time. We have a question over here. It takes some time and effort to roll it up every day and roll it down, but it's worthwhile because then your pollinators can get in and things like that. Yeah.
I have a problem with overheating because I've got the fiberglass, kind of stuff. So what's the max temp that I should, and then I've got a problem, I've got to ventilate.
Yeah,
in a
the
greenhouse,
maximum.
What'd you say?
I don't know what the actual maximum temperature is, but
I've
I
had to
don't.
get up to 120 degrees.
Yeah,
in the summer, and I've
tomatoes
got
don't
vents.
like it above like 85 or 90.
Is that okay?
So you're gonna have to somehow get some more ventilation in there. If you could lift up a roof panel somehow on an automatic vent, leave the door open, get a fan blowing in there.
Well, that falls into my next question. You said only one fan on this whole greenhouse is
Yeah,
enough
it's
to move
24
it?
feet long now.
But that one fan will pull enough air through there? Oh, thank you.
Yeah. But I do roll up the side. See, so I've got ventilation coming in through the side also. Now, sometimes in August when it gets really hot, I will take the plastic and roll it completely over to the other side and just leave it open all the time.
I have a question
Yes.
about soil. I had a lot of insects, aphids mostly, but those weird sucking bugs, I don't know what their name is, but anyway.
Yes.
I've seen more
Pests.
destruction than I could have imagined my yard could hold. So when I have raised beds and I've had a problem and I managed to, I kept battling them at the time and made some harvest tomatoes, and cabbage destroyed everything. So now I wonder about that soil before I go plant in it again.
Oh, like if the pests are still there?
Yeah,
More than likely. Unless you
so-
had a really, really good deep freeze during the wintertime, they probably are still there. So I would use, did you get a picture of the slide with the foliar spray?
I did. Yeah, I
Okay,
did.
I would try that. The other thing that you can do is put the plastic, probably the black plastic, and heat up the soil, and that'll kill some of them.
It doesn't
Or
encourage them
get
to come
some-
on. I have worms, I have good things in there, but if I've
Yeah.
now got insects, I'm thinking twice. Do I need to take all that soil out and put all new soil?
That depends on how big of a space you have. I mean, if it's just a little garden box, yeah. If it's
I
full of
have-
pests, I
I
would
have
totally get
several.
rid of it all.
Okay, I have several
But if
beds,
it's
so
a
I
huge
may-
garden, you can't do that. That's
No.
no. But the other thing that I've had some people do is with chickens and have your chickens, like I had a slug problem one year, so the chickens ate up all the slugs, so that was wonderful. And then I shooed them out of the garden after that. Any other questions on the gardening? Yeah, in the back. Okay.
We have a big problem with stink bugs. They're everywhere. From what I understand, they suck the nutrients out of plants or like attracted to them. How do you get rid of them, or how do you protect your garden?
I haven't had a problem with stink bugs, but I'm guessing it would probably be the same way. You could try that spray. You can also put garlic. You can make a mixture with just garlic and cayenne. Bugs hate that, and it's not going to hurt the plants at all. And cover them. So I think I forgot to mention this, actually. I can't remember. I think it's AG21, I think, is a bug protection. It's not frost because it's lighter. So you could actually just do that to protect from the bugs. And you could leave that on. And unless they need pollinated, then you're going to have to open it. But if you just use one of these, they're called insect barriers or insect covers. But what you have to do, because they're sneaky, I know, especially with the cabbage moths, they'll get in under the covers. Any place they can find, they'll get in. So take your cover down in the dirt and bury it actually along the sides. Just completely bury it. Make sure they can't get in there at all. That should help, I would think, a lot with the stink bug problem too. And the moths, for sure. Any other questions on the gardening? There's a couple back here. Hold on, because I can see behind you. Yes.
Between knocking off snow from the hoop house and weeding and everything you do, how much time a day do you think you spend on your garden?
Like in the wintertime or
No, just averaged over the whole year. Or
Well,
I guess you could say winter versus summer.
My family would answer differently than I do. On a good day, probably at least an hour. But when it's really, really hot, because I'm hand watering, it can take me 2 or 3 hours a day to water. So, yeah, couple hours a day, probably. But once you have everything established and everything's planted, and if you had a watering system in place, I wouldn't think you'd have to spend more than an hour. Like for snow removal, I probably spent an hour up there removing snow here not too long ago, but I don't mind it because it's good exercise for me, and it gets me out of the house, gets me some fresh air. So in the wintertime, there's really no maintenance. There's really nothing that you're doing besides removing snow. So it's really the spring, the summer, and the fall. That's the most work. Yeah, I get that question a lot. How do you do all that you do? Okay, so I'll tell you how I do what I do. I do not have internet, and I do not have TV. Nor does my device work where I live, which is a real pain sometimes. That's how I get things done. Yes, there was a, yes.
Okay, I just bought a greenhouse that I have to put up, and you're saying you can overwinter stuff in there, and you go out and it's frozen. Well, you know, like if my lettuce is frozen in the garden, it's dead, but it's still alive when it's
It comes
in there?
back to life.
Really?
It's insulated.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, well, it says uninsulated, but I mean, it's got the plastic and it's got this cover over top of it. So when it does, temperatures do start coming up during the day, it comes back. The roots aren't frozen.
Oh,
You're
okay.
still, and depending on the temperatures, you can still have damage to the plants. I'm not going to lie to you. And I have lost some over the years where I'll just pull them out. That's good for the chickens, whatever, you know. I wouldn't say this is a 100% foolproof method, but the pictures I'm showing you are for real.
Okay, so you don't have to put any kind of heat in there?
Nope, no heat,
Okay.
none, and no insulation. People have asked me, well, what if you take like the 3-inch insulation or whatever and put it around the outside? You don't have to. I mean, I guess you could try that. And I also get a question, well, what about beds that are up off the ground? Because it's harder for some people to bend over, you know? And so like doing beds up here that you can reach. But I don't know if that would work as well just because your plants then aren't in the ground. And the ground is a good insulator.
We're curious, how far north are you located?
You can talk to me afterwards because we're being live streamed.
We are.
Who else has a question? I always get that question too.
Any other questions?
And then we're going to get ready for part 3 here.
My question is, what kind of kitchen compost did you suggest?
Whatever scraps you have, I wouldn't use a lot of like fatty stuff, just, you know, scraps, banana peels or, you know, your whatever tops of this or that. I just start a container, and when it starts getting full, then you can either put it in a bucket, or what I do usually is dig a trench or several holes in the greenhouse before it starts to freeze, and then I just dump it up there and cover it during the winter time. Otherwise, during the summertime, I'm always digging and putting in holes out, you know, for the compost outside.
Okay, does that include coffee grounds?
Yeah.
Okay, somebody said that. Okay.
Yeah.
And the other question I had is, I have strawberries and I just keep buying an extra plant every year. So I have a lot of plants and I yield maybe like 5, 6, 7 strawberries. And I'm wondering,
Well, you
What-
have to
what
cut the
should I do?
runners off of the strawberries. So the strawberries send out runners,
yes, I do.
and then it takes from the plant. So what you're really supposed to do is cut those off and take the old plants out and let
Okay.
the new ones grow.
Okay.
You could try
Thank
that.
you.
And fertilize too. Fertilizer, especially now because our soil is so depleted. Okay. All right, so if we could if you want to bring me that thing, and then we'll go on to part 3. Let me pull up the PowerPoint here. Give me just a minute. Come on up here. So I have a special guest here. Thank you so much. Oh, okay. So I have a friend. Most of you have probably met him already. His name is Brent Wagner, and he is a certified herbalist. I am self-taught. I am not actually certified. I am self-taught. But he is certified, and he has so much knowledge and so much information. I've been to a couple of his classes. He's from Bonners Ferry area. So I said, hey, how about if we team up on this? Because what I used to do, come on in here, what I used to do is just teach on wild edible plants. Most of you have probably seen my little book that I wrote back there, and then just what you can eat in the area. Well, since this is my 3rd year doing this, I thought I need to mix this up a little bit to make it interesting. And so talking to Brent, I said, how about if we teach everybody how to make their own backyard herbal kit, not just who you can eat this, but grow this plant, forage this plant, dry it or whatever, and then make your own kit, okay? So I was really excited about this. So him and I are going to work together, and I just want to show you kind of what, he's working on some ideas. I'm still working on ideas, but I just wanted to show you kind of what I've come up with here so far. And I got this idea from another lady friend of mine, and I kind of built on what she was doing. So this is a pack, literally this size, okay? It's not big. You can get these on Amazon. But this has taken me a lot of time to put together, but you can see the pictures on there. So what I have done, and a lot of this I've learned from him. He's going to share with you in just a moment. The herbs that are in our area, okay? Which ones to look for and how to store them, and then how to put them into a kit and what to do with them. Because it's one thing to have the plant, right, in a jar sitting on your shelf, but it's another thing to know what to do with that plant. So this is what I've been working on. Making tinctures. Why don't you tell them real quick what you've got coming up, and then I'll finish. What your sign up back there. Your sign up sheets.
Yes, we have tincture and herbal making classes that we want to provide, and if we have enough people, it'll happen. And so there's a sign up sheet back there, and I believe we're asking $30 per person just to cover materials. And you'll make your own salve, you'll make your own tinctures, and you'll be able to take them home and put them in your kit.
And I'm telling you, it's good stuff, because many years ago, at the first class I went to, I'm still using some of his salves. So yeah, I thought that was really exciting that he's going to be doing that. So make sure you get on his list. So that's an introduction to what we're doing, and he's going to go. Do you want to do the clicker? You can just go through the plants.
Yeah.
And I'm going to hang out up here, and we're going to do this together. So go for it. Ooh.
Okay. Bearberry, I usually call it uva ursi or kinnikinnick. A lot of people have different names. This is great for UTI, urinary tract infections. So usually you would use the leaves, and you would pick the leaves in the fall and dry them. And just lots of little leaves, and it makes a nice, it's not super tasty, but it's not bad. And these are great for your urinary tract. It's soothing and healing, and it helps with infection. You can also eat the red berries. You can eat them raw or cooked.
And it works, I will tell you, because I had a friend call me, and she said, my mother has a UTI. What can I use? And I told her, and I called her a couple days ago. Did it work? And she said yes.
Okay.
So there's testimony.
Yes. Okay, burdock. Wow, burdock is useful for so many things. It's a great liver cleanser. It's a great blood cleanser. You can actually use the seeds and make like a kidney tonic, but be careful with that. It's very strong, but it helps with infection as well. But you can use the stalks. If you ever pick the stalks and you lick your fingers, you'll know it. It's very, very bitter, but that's why it's so good for the liver. It makes your liver move and helps clean the liver.
And how can they recognize burdock easily?
Well, burdock, the first year, is kind of a rosette. It doesn't grow very tall, but the second year it grows tall. And a lot of people just use the root for making teas. What's that tea that uses it?
Oh, I can't think of it.
I'll forget.
But they have those prickly things that stick to your socks when you're walking through somewhere.
The burrs, dog burrs, yeah.
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 So how would they, if they wanted to put this in a kit, what would be the best way to store this or to have it?
I would dry the root.
Okay.
And powder the root or grind it up. But also we know the Japanese make gumbo, and they use the leaves for eating gumbo. So there's a lot of things you can do with, burdock's awesome.
That's cool.
Okay, chamomile. Chamomile kind of looks like feverfew, but it's different. But chamomile is great for your nasal, sinuses, for drying up a lot of mucus. It helps some people with rashes.
So that would be making it into a salve for rashes?
Yes, or you could make a tea out of it and then put that on the area. So usually how you would save this is just dry the flowers. Pick the flowers and dry the flowers, and then use the flowers for your medicinal uses. You can make a tea or salve or whatever with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Red clover, purple, white, or yellow. Clover is awesome.
Yes.
Clover can make you bleed in some cases. The yellow sweet clover is it's a good blood thinner. Otherwise, red clover is known to be a great purifier. So it purifies your blood. If you have someone with acne or a young person that may have a lot of acne or oil secretions, start having them use red clover tea, and it'll really help clear up the complexion. It also works on the liver, and the burdock does the same thing, clears up the infection.
So what would be the best way then to keep this one as a plant in your home?
Thank you for bringing that back. Flowers. Pick the flowers.
Okay.
Yeah, just pick the flowers when they look so pretty. That's when you want them. And when you pick that flower, you may have green. The first green leaves will be attached to that head, and that's completely okay. No problem.
And I can attest to this one with burns, because I had a burn and I tried the aloe vera and it just wasn't taking away the pain. So I had a jar of this and I made it into a paste and a poultice, and I put it on my burn, and it took away the pain like immediately, just like that. The pain was completely gone, and I had no swelling.
Okay.
No pink.
I've not used it for that. That's exciting. Now, this is my favorite go-to.
Yes.
It saved my marriage. I wish I could tell you that story, but we don't have time. But comfrey is a great healer. If you cut yourself, or if you bruise yourself, you put a poultice on or you put a salve on, it'll just take that sting right away, and it'll start healing and mending the skin. It's a cell proliferant. It's great stuff. You could use the roots, you can use the stems, you can use the leaves, dry them, or you can just have them fresh, and you can make and we'll do this. We'll make a salve out of comfrey, and you can just put it in your oven. You put maybe 4 or 5 or 6 of these great big leaves in a casserole dish or a pie pan or something like that, and you have oil in it. You pour oil on top, and then you just put it on the lowest heat of your oven. Leave the door open just a little bit if you can, and in the morning, 8 hours later, the herb will be nice and crunchy. It'll be turned black, but that olive oil will have turned a beautiful green. And now you've got a wonderful healing oil, and you can make a salve out of that. It's awesome.
Yeah, for your kit. So you could do an oil.
Yes.
Or you can dry the leaves. Do you do tea with this one? Or not so much?
There's different schools of thought, and talk to me later, and we can discuss this.
Okay.
Echinacea. You want to talk about a great immune booster? Echinacea revs up your immune system. Use it for a week or 2 weeks, and then you could get off of it. And if you need to get back onto it, you can. It kind of tricks the body, and it builds up an immune response. It is great for snake bites or brown recluse bites or anything like that.
And how would you use it for that? If you got bit by a snake, what would you do with echinacea?
First, I would eat a whole bunch of it. I would take a lot of the root or the flower heads or the seeds. Very good, and it stops it. I'm sorry, I can't think of the word right now. The reaction of the snake bite or the brown recluse, it'll stop that from happening by taking it internally. You can also poultice with it, and it works very good. Yeah, good stuff.
Okay, good. And you can grow that in your garden. You can buy the potted plants. They're also called coneflowers.
Yes.
If you're not familiar.
The Echinacea purpurea is the easiest to grow. Never mind.
No, that's okay. But you know what I noticed too? I wanted to dig mine up and
Augustifolia.
there you go,
Yeah.
and get the root, but don't do that right away or you'll lose your plant the first year.
Yeah.
So,
3 years growth is a good time for the root.
yeah.
Okay, another go-to is elderberry. Wow, elderberry is so great for people with shaking problems. They should be using elderberry. It's great for the immune system. It stops viruses from replicating. Another one would be like fresh ginger, and you could put them together. But you could poultice bruises, arthritis. There's so many good things for it. And I would use the flowers and or you only get one or the other, flowers or the berries. But if there's enough trees, you can pick all of those and dry them. And then you've got them all, you can make jam out of it.
Yeah.
And your kids will never get sick at school because they're using it as a jam on their toast every morning.
And it works.
Yeah, and you can make juice out of it and drink it. It's not bad. It's really nice. It's a wonderful medicine God has made.
Yeah, we juiced some berries back there, 100% juice. I mean, you can't get any better than that. I had a lady just say, I'm not feeling very good. I'm going to buy this jar of your juice, and I'm going to drink the entire jar at one time because I have a flight tomorrow. And I never heard back, so I'm assuming it helped her. But I've done that. You know, if you don't feel good, it's good for that.
Another go-to is plantain. It grows in your yard, I'm sure. And it usually grows right along your driveway. And you either have the Plantago major, the Plantago minor, and while it draws toxins out, it draws infection out, spider bites, mosquito bites. It's great for clearing up sinus issues. You can drink a tea. It's wonderful. It's a super plant to have around.
I also read too, this is called a medicine leaf in a cabinet. What is it, the leaf in, I don't know. Do you know what I'm saying? I did it on one of my other classes. I can't remember the term.
One time we were walking with a bunch of kids for an afternoon walk, and they were messing around with the tree stump. And all of a sudden, all these kids started crying. There was about 11 kids and their parents. We were all taking a walk. And so quickly we looked for plantain, and they were little tiny because it was August and it was so dry. They were little plantains. And I gave it to the parents. I said, here, chew it and put it on the kids' stings. And they did. And within a minute after they did that, all the cries stopped.
Yeah.
Because it just pulled out that pain.
How is the best way to identify this plant? Because this is a very important plant to know.
Yes, on the back side, there's ribs. There's ribs that are very noticeable. And they have stalks right in the middle. And they're everywhere. They
And
grow
if you pull the leaf apart, there's strings.
The stalk, that's what I meant to say. The
strings.
The ribs, yeah.
And this is also good, I've read too, for weight loss if you drink a tea 30 minutes before you eat. Yeah.
And of course, you've heard of plantain, maybe Metamucil. It helps you, gives you fiber. Okay, the seeds come from Plantago major or Plantago, never mind.
I didn't know that.
But yeah.
So how would they take this one and save it and keep it for their kit?
Dry the leaves. Dry the leaves and the seeds. And just dry them and keep them stored in a glass jar or a plastic bag, however you do it.
And then you could powder it if you wanted to.
You could, yeah.
Put it in a capsule or take it as a tea.
Yeah, wonderful. Rose hips. I think vitamin C right off.
Yes.
But the whole rose is so helpful for healing. So it's a great thing to have.
So they could make a poultice out of this. Would they collect just the leaves? Or just the berry? Or what's left after the flower falls off?
Right, you have the rose hip, and you want to take the seeds out, and you could use the rest of it. The seeds are very hard, but you can use the leaves and the petals. The flower petals can be saved and are useful as well. Very healing, high in vitamin C.
Yeah, 500 milligrams for each one.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you can't find these and you don't know where to forage or whatever, you can buy all of these online from, Mountain Rose Herbs or whatever. But we're just trying to get you to think about the plants that are local here that you can find almost anywhere hiking around.
And it'd be great if we could go all have like a herb walk one day.
We are in May. Did you see it? Yeah.
No, I didn't see it. That'll be fun. Identify. Now here's another winner. Of course, a lot of people don't like St. John's wort. It's on the list for bad plants, right?
Oh, noxious weed? Is that
Noxious
why?
weed, yes,
Okay.
but no, it's wonderful. When these things grow up, it's usually in just about the 1st of July, last of June. I'll go and I'll be picking all the flowers off of them and filling up bags with them. This makes a most wonderful, these yellow flowers, when you put them in olive oil to make like a salve or an oil, it turns red because of the hypericums that are in this plant. And if you cut your nerve, you cut a finger or you cut something and you lost feeling, you've cut a nerve, put that on as soon as you can. It's so healing to that nerve, and that nerve will grow back much quicker.
Wow, I
So
didn't know
it
that.
works so good. It's a wonderful.
That is amazing. So
Yes.
with this one, you would want to have it for a tea, like dried for a tea, or into a salve of some kind,
Yeah,
is what you're saying.
you could do, usually, and people, of course, take the leaves for being depressed. It's a mood uplifter. So there's lots of good things in this plant.
Cool.
Yeah. Stinging nettles. How many of us have run out as kids and just, ooh,
Yeah.
yeah. But this is such a nutritious plant. You should pick it in the spring and save it till wintertime and make your soup broths out of it. It's a very nice earthy flavor. It's so full of minerals that it's just what you need in the wintertime.
I've heard this is one of the most nutritious plants that you can eat.
It's very good. Yeah, and of course, if you have seasonal allergies, this is a good one to use. Also, men use it for prostate issues. There's lots of good uses from it.
So I have on there for tincture. You'd make a tincture for this one for allergies?
Absolutely, you could do that. You could dry it, use it as a tea, use it as a food, soup base. Many
A
good
lot of
ways.
uses for that one.
Yeah, and also the nettle roots are also useful too in some cases.
And if you don't know what it is, if you're not sure if it's a nettle,
Touch it, touch it.
slap your wrist with it, you'll know real quick.
It only lasts for an hour or so. Okay, wild lettuce. Now this grows everywhere too. And it's usually in places, in parking lots. It grows in hard places. And it'll have these little yellow flowers at the top. And then they'll turn white and they'll blow away kind of like a dandelion. But this whole plant, it's prickly lettuce is another name for it. So you want to be careful, use a glove when you harvest it. But I've dried these, and in fact, some of them are still hanging in my shed. And what we use them for is we'll cut them up into real small after they dry, and it's great for pain management. It has a little bit of opiate in it. And that it's the white milk that you can squeeze out of it if you cut it, and you can squeeze out, or it just kind of exudes out. It's very good for pain or for helping you sleep. In fact, what you could do is you could fill up a quart jar, a quarter full of the dry herb, pour hot water over it, and when it's cool enough to drink that down, and you will likely go to sleep, and your back pain will go away.
It's good to know.
It's very nice.
So this would be best to dry the plant and just have a jar of it to
Yes.
make teas.
Yes, and people that are really into harvesting the white milk from it for other uses, pain management and other things, it's a lot more detail to
Yeah,
it,
I
but
bet.
who has time, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yarrow. Now yarrow grows everywhere too. I'm sure you've seen it. It has a look-alike, which is called tansy. Tansy is kind of a noxious weed. I have plenty of that in my property, unfortunately, but that can be used for stuff too. But anyway, the yarrow is very good for many things. You can mix it with cayenne, serviceberry for your toothaches. I like to use it for immune system response. It helps your immune system. So it cuts.
Yarrow stops bleeding,
Stops bleeding. So
and
if
so
you
does
have
cayenne.
if you have a cut, mix
They
it
used
together.
to use it, I don't remember which war, way back. They would take yarrow and just stuff wounds with yarrow.
Yeah. It's easier to find than cobwebs sometimes. Yeah.
So
It is.
keeping this plant for a home medical kit would be how?
I would dry and probably powder either dry and cut and sift or powder the flower head. But the leaves are also useful, and the stem, the whole upper plant is useful
Okay,
for this. Yeah, it's great.
that is good.
Other plants, of course, we know aloe vera, and you probably have aloe vera growing in your house. Hopefully you do. If you don't, you should. A little pot, and they just keep making, and so if you have a burn, you can put it on quickly, and ulcers and other problems. Aloe vera is also a cell proliferant, like comfrey is, so it's very helpful to regrow damaged tissue.
And you can eat it.
And you can eat it, absolutely. Cayenne powder. Everybody should have cayenne. Powder you should have probably in your,
Kit.
you've got your kitchen cayenne maybe that's not very hot. They say hotter the better. So you've got the 40 BTUs, it's not BTUs, but it's heating units. Or you could go with 100 or 150. You could go to 1,000,000 if you wanted the ghost peppers. But the cayenne peppers and those things, they make good responses. They stop bleeding, number one. If you're bleeding, take some cayenne and that finger will stop bleeding. Or you can shake it in the cut. And yes, you'll do a little dance. And if you have a headache, you can sniff a little bit up your nose and you'll forget about your headache. It disappears, I'm honest. It's a miracle.
It'll stop a runny nose too.
It'll stop a runny nose. So cayenne works. Hemorrhoids, so many things. And yeah, you do feel the heat a little bit.
It's better than dying and bleeding to death,
Yes. Cayenne is, and it's a go-to. Look, Dr. Cherney is no longer living, but I worked with Dr. Cherney at a facility, and we had this woman that had a mini TIA, mini stroke, and she was sitting there and she couldn't talk to her daughter. So they called Dr. Cherney, and Dr. Cherney was there very quickly, and he got cayenne and water. He emptied a couple capsules in the cup of water, and they were able to get her to drink it. And she got so angry, but she was able to talk. She hated cayenne.
Yeah.
But it brought her out of her mini TIA state where she couldn't do anything. It also helps to bring blood to an area such as a heart attack. So if you're starving for blood, you want to use this. My wife uses cayenne regularly for her missed beats in the heart, arrhythmias. So it's so useful. Hawthorn berry, which grows in this, is that on there? You didn't put it on there?
No.
Okay,
I
it's
missed
fine.
it. Sorry, next time.
Hawthorn berry goes with cardiac. It's cardiac food, and you should use it with the cayenne pepper. Motherwort is another good one that you could grow in your garden. So
Yeah, we could be here a long time. I was
I'm
trying to
sorry.
get everything
She's-
down.
I'm known for going on and on. People
You're
are
doing fine.
Sleeping and okay, Oregon grapefruit. Oregon grapefruit, we know it grows all around my house, so I'm sure it grows in your house too. It'll get these beautiful yellow flowers, and then it gets the Oregon grapes that they call
Sour.
it, the sour
Sour.
grapes. But have you ever ate one? That taste? It tastes like berberine. And berberine is that yellow constituent that if you break the root, it's usually in the root, the outside will be yellow. That's the berberine. That's the same thing that's in, do you know what? I can't think of the name. Golden seal.
There you go.
So golden seal is touted, it's very good, but berberine is poor man's
Wow, I didn't
golden
know that.
seal. You just go up and dig it up, scrape the roots, and there you have your yellow, which is the berberine.
So then do you dry it and powder it, the roots?
Just
Or
take
what
the
do you do?
roots. You could either scrape them or just throw them in a blender and go for it. Vitamixes really do good.
Wow, okay.
And yeah, you'll get some root fiber in there too, but it's fine.
Wow.
You'll do good. Berberine works best on contact. So if you're having a sore, where you can put it on the sore, that's where it works best.
Cool.
Okay,
Pine.
pine.
Yeah.
Now, we all have pines growing around us, so I ask you to take advantage of this. If you have, it's high in vitamin C, and if you have an issue with some virus that might be trying to get a hold of you, drink pine tea.
Is it any pine, Brent? Any pine tree? Because I've heard there's only certain ones. Do
I've
you
had
know?
success with many of
Okay.
them. Yeah, longer needles, the better.
Okay.
But yeah, just grab needles, throw them in, and make a tea out of it, and drink that tea. Very helpful to stop those viruses, help the body deal with them. Raspberry. Raspberry roots, raspberry themselves, raspberry leaf tea. You can use it in so many ways for young women, young girls that have come into womanhood should be drinking this tea. It'll help with their complexion. It'll help with the natural advancement of womanhood.
And you're growing this in your garden. You should have raspberry bushes so you
Yeah.
can harvest the leaves.
Take leaves and they make a nice tea
Yep.
as well. Headaches, prevent miscarriage, many good things. Rhubarb. A name for it is turkey rhubarb. And you can eat the stalks, right? Dip them. As a kid, I knew where they grew down the road, and I would go harvest a bunch. I'd bring them back, and I'd dip them in sugar and eat them. That's the only way I could eat it, but I liked it. But the root is actually what you use, and it's a great laxative. It's a gentle laxative, and if you don't want to dig these things up, you can get them at herb stores. But it's a nice way to go about moving things. Okay, shepherd's purse stops bleeding. Do you know what shepherd's purse looks like? I'm sorry we don't have a picture, but it looks like it has all these little purses that grow up.
I have a picture in my book if you want to go back and look.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it stops bleeding. And you
They look
just
like
take the
hearts.
whole plant and you just kind of wallow it up between your hands, and you can stick it in a bleeding place, or you can make a tincture with it, and you can take that tincture. A lot of midwives will use cayenne and shepherd's purse to stop the bleeding if something won't stop bleeding.
And I have a friend that actually did that and said that it
Okay.
worked.
Yeah, and sometimes they'll mix it with honey because the mother is so tired, and that honey will give a little extra pep and stop bleeding. So many good things.
I think that was it. Do you want us to answer questions first, or do you want to do your announcements first? Okay. A couple more prizes, and then those of you who want to hang out and ask us some more questions, we'll just hang out up here for that. And so give us a couple minutes. She needs your mic.
All right, we have a few of the prizes left. We have some wonderful herb scissors. Wow, I don't think I've ever seen them like that. That is pretty cool. That is from the Kitchen Engine. Pull out your ticket. We are looking for 76009. Anybody have 76009?
Not for the squash.
Oh, there we go. Congratulations. You're welcome.
Oh, let's try that.
And let's see here. This is a little scrub brush. Is this in here? Let's see. I think this is it. Yeah. Wow. All right. Palm brush. This looks very handy. It has a little finger hold here so it doesn't slip out of your hands to be able to get your veggies clean. 76059. 76059. There she is. There you go. And we have two more left. I have this wonderful colander here. This looks very handy. Nice bottom on it so it doesn't scratch your kitchen top. 76079. These are from the Kitchen Engine. Thank you guys. 76079.
Over here.
All right. As I'm delivering this, the last one I would like to mention is the Appleway Florist and Greenhouse on Sprague. They have donated several items to our community garden. They are a great resource as well in our community. I encourage you to stop by and check them out. We have had a wonderful time building a relationship with them here in our community. They also gave us a $20 gift card, and they are getting all their seeds ready to go, and we'll be happy to see you this spring in their greenhouse.
How do people sign up if they want to do the community garden? Do they just come talk to you
Yep.
right now, or do you guys have a
Yeah.
website where they can?
We don't have a website,
Okay.
just come talk to me.
So come see her if you want to get on the
Yeah,
garden.
yep,
Okay.
yep. 76064. 76064. All right. The last thing would just be, yep, if you have any questions about the community garden, feel free to come ask me. And I just want to thank you all for coming out today. I hope you were blessed and were able to learn a lot, try some new things. Gardening for me is a learning process. It's never, I have arrived and I am the master gardener.
No.
So
You never
it's a very
arrive.
humbling experience. So
Yeah,
thank
and
you.
we'll hang around for those who want to ask questions. We'll just hang around up here. We'll keep the mics. Is that
Sounds
okay?
great. And thank you guys so much for coming and taking your
Yeah.
time to share with us today.
So who has a question that we can answer? If you need to leave, go ahead, that's fine, but maybe just kind of tiptoe out so that those of us who want to ask questions, does anybody have one? Or maybe it'd be better if you just come on up here and ask us individually, I don't know. I think they'll just come up here and talk to us.
Is these herbs something you cultivate or is it something you gather?
These that we showed? Generally, these are just things that you wildcraft them, they grow wild.